Well, I hope 4-1, 4-2, and 4-3 all went pretty well for you. So we're gonna start talking about 4-4, and we're gonna start talking about a rhombi and squares. So a rhombi is just the plural version of a rhombus. Okay, so a rhombus. So we're talking about a rhombus, and we're talking about squares, and we're talking about what makes a rhombus, what makes a square, but we're always talking about where do they fit into the bigger category of parallelograms and the such. So parallelograms, you know, parallelogram is kind of a subset of quadrilaterals. Okay, so there's quadrilaterals, which are all four-sided figures. So then we have parallelograms. And we've talked, we just recently talked about rectangles. And so now we're going to talk about a rhombus and a square. So kind of a rhombus is different than a square, or than a rectangle. So a rhombus is different than a rectangle, follows different rules. But a square has got properties that are part of both. Okay, so this is kind of a way to map out kind of how they're related. So a square kind of has pieces that fit into a rectangle, and a rhombus is kind of its own piece here. So once again, they're all a rhombus. They're all a parallelogram. Excuse me. All of these shapes, both of these shapes are parallelograms. Just they also have some other distinct features. So a rhombus is going to have four congruent sides. Okay, so it's four congruent sides. So it's a parallelogram, so all those things are true. Congruent, parallel, opposite angles, congruent, consecutive angles are supplementary, and the diagonals bisect each other. Okay, so these five you should be pretty comfortable with those now. You should be able to recognize them. You should be able to recite them, and or at least kind of have them at your fingertips from memory. So what happens about this? Okay, well, a couple things happen. One, because all four sides are equal, all right, as a result, the diagonals become perpendicular. Okay, so remember that's the symbol for perpendicular. Okay, so that's the symbol for perpendicular. So they create 90-degree angles. Okay, so the diagonals created 90-degree angles. And also as a result, the diagonals bisect the opposite angles. Okay, so now remember all the rules of parallelograms: opposite angles congruent, consecutive angles supplementary, all those things. But it also bisects the opposite angle. So what does that mean? That means like angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. Angle 3 and angle 4. Okay, angle 5 and angle 6, and then angle 7 and angle 8. Also kind of remember, because it's a parallelogram, that these two whole things are equal. These two whole things are equal. So reality, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all going to be equal. And then 5, 6, 7, and 8 are also going to be equal to each other. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind, that 1, 2, 3, 4 are equal, and then 5, 6, 7, and 8 are also going to be equal. Okay. Okay, so let's explore this idea a little bit. So they tell us it's a rhombus. So when you have a rhombus, what you have is you have four right triangles. Okay, you have four right triangles. So right triangles, they also bring in kind of their own. They bring in some of their own rules. You know, your Pythagorean theorem and trig and all those things come into play. But let's look and see what we have here. So BCD is 64. So this whole thing is 64 degrees. I know it doesn't look like it, but again, go by information, don't go by pictures. They want to know how big is BAC. So they're looking for this one right here. Okay, so we're using two features. Okay, one is that diagonals bisect angles. And we're also using that opposite angles are congruent. Okay, so if this whole thing is 64, this whole thing is also 64 degrees. Okay, that's they're parallelograms. It's a parallelogram, so the opposite angles are congruent. Then I want to bisect it. So I'm going to take 64 divided by 2, and my answer is just going to be 32 degrees. That's it. That's all I'm looking for. So for here, AB is 2x plus 3, BC is x plus 7. It's a rhombus. In a rhombus, all sides are equal. So x is going to be 4, but I'm not done. X equals 4, great. How big is CD going to be? How big is this side going to be? Well, all I'm going to do is take any of my sides, okay, so 2x plus 3, and I'm going to substitute it in there. So this is 11, so that makes all of these 11. That's going to be as simple as it gets, okay? They're equal to each other, so I set them equal, I do a little algebra, and away I go. So now, the square, very, very, very specific. Square, very specific. You need to tell me it's going to have 4 congruent sides, 4 congruent angles. Okay, so 4 congruent sides, which is kind of like a rhombus. 4 congruent angles, and believe it or not, those are going to be 4 right angles. So that is like a rectangle. Okay, so it's kind of a little bit of both. In fact, I'm going to put right up there. They're obviously congruent because they're all going to be right angles. So that's what I'm looking at. So it's a little bit of rhombus and a little bit of rectangle, and everything that's true in a rhombus and everything that's true in a rectangle is also true in a square, okay? So a square has got kind of everything, okay? So right angles, so you're going to have rectangle. Okay, congruent sides, you're going to have rhombus. And in the middle of both, you're going to have a square. Okay, that's kind of the overlap. This is called a Venn diagram, and it kind of shows how information is broke up. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there. So we have a rhombus, intersects at V. So WZX, so this is 39.5. Find ZYX. So ZYX. Okay, so this is going to take a little bit of work. I know they bisect, so if this one's 39.5, then this one's 39.5, which means together they add up to 79 degrees. Okay, so these two together, they add up to 79 degrees. Okay, but they want this one. They want this. How big is this angle? Okay, so remember, these two have to add up to 180. So I end up just taking 180 minus 79, and I get 101. There's my answer. There's my answer. And similar for letter B, WX is 8x minus 5, WZ is 6x plus 3, so 8x minus 5 is going to equal 6x plus 3. So, a couple of algebra steps later. So 2x equals 8, x equals 4. There's my answer. All right, so now, remember, it's a square, and everything Everything that's true in a rhombus and everything that's true in a rectangle is also true in a square. So if this is 3, how big is the whole thing? Well, if that's 3, then the other side is 3, so we're just going to have a matter of 6. What about TZ? TZ is also going to be 3. Okay, so now WTZ, this angle, how big is that? Well, remember it's a rhombus, so this is actually a 90-degree angle. And then WYX, remember it's a rhombus, so it bisects, so that makes that 45 and that 45. There's my answer. There's my answer. Okay, play around with some of these ideas. Remember, a lot of things are true in a square. Okay, so if you're not 100% sure how to proceed, I would go back and look at some of the properties of a rhombus and a rectangle and see if that helps you, see if that gives you an idea of where to start. Okay, so now you go do the 4-4 assignments and the quizzes, and let me know how I can help you.